and welcome to the first ever Twilight Monk podcast. I'm your host, Trent Kaniuga. I'm the director of the Twilight Monk game and the creator of Twilight Monk. Today I have with me Tobor, or Matt Fitzgerald, and we sat down for about an hour and 20 to just talk about game development and how we met and a little bit of the behind the scenes, a little inside baseball on the making of Twilight Monk. So Tobor, are you ready to kick off the Twilight Monk podcast series? You ready to do this with me?
I am. I was born ready, I think.
So I have never done a podcast. I've done long videos, for my YouTube channel. Why are we doing this? What's the point? There was basically a request. Question. Yeah, it's a good question, but it's a good way to kick it off. Like, if somebody listens to all these in the sequence, like this is the first episode of it. Right now it's just us chatting, just hanging out and talking. I'm the director of the game Twilight Monk, and I created Twilight Monk years ago. Matt Fitzgerald. Can we use your full name? You go by Tobor online.
Yeah, Matt's good. Either one, whatever you like. Yeah,
I just call you Matt.
Don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, so this was requested by Gravity Games Arise. They are our publisher, and they kind of thought, well, hey, maybe we can get Trent to do like a podcast with the rest of the dev team. I would like to have other people from the development team on. I also want to simultaneously edit these up in a fancy schmancy way to put them on my YouTube channel as well. So some people might be listening there, but I suppose the best way to start it out is just kind of setting up what can people expect from this podcast. I'd like to have, as I mentioned, different people who've worked on the games, different people that I've worked with on Twilight Monk, and just kind of talk shop about. We're going to go a little bit deeper than just what you might find in a gamer's podcast. This isn't like a gaming podcast. It's more like a developer's podcast. Could be thought of as a form of commentary, even to some degree. We're going to dig into some of the challenges, the stuff you wouldn't hear about, technically from somebody who's not made games. We're legit making these games ourselves. So I suppose we should let everybody know the latest news is that the Twilight Monk game demo just dropped this weekend.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. What did you say to me about it? It's nervous, but also...
Oh, it's good and bad, yeah. Equal parts awesome and terrifying.
And it was kind of shadow drop, too. It was they weren't sure if Steam was going to approve it before it went live. We had all this questionnaire set up. Over at Gravity Games, many people are, if you follow Twitter or if you follow... the updates on Reddit or the updates in the community tab on the Steam page for Twilight Monk, you've probably been seeing a lot of posts from Prince or Young Me, who are really handling a lot of our social media outreach stuff. And they work for Gravity Game Arise in Japan. And they're just doing a fantastic job. But sometimes we can't know if Steam is going to approve our date that we wanted to launch that demo, that playtest. So it really kind of shadow dropped in the middle of the night for me. I woke up and it was oh shit, it's it's out right now. People can play.
Yeah, I was not expecting it at midnight Friday morning.
It's only for 2 or 3 days. So I immediately went into retweet mode, blasting it out to everyone who's ever bought anything from me ever on Gumroad. So I suppose I want to keep this roughly about an hour at least, or we'll probably go over a bit, but because there's a million things. And you and I, when we talk for 4 or 5 hours at a time.
Yeah.
So I suppose we should find out a little bit more about you. You've been a programmer on this project, but that's not necessarily what you were brought up to do. It's not what you thought you were going to be ending up doing. Why don't you talk a little bit about your experience working in games, and and then we'll dig into how we met and whatnot after that.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience working in games, just my own projects. And programming for me was always kind of a means to an end, because I did mostly music and art and stuff like that, animation. And I wanted to see, the little guys move around on the screen and be able to control them and hit bad guys in the face with axes and stuff. So I was I better learn how to program to make them do that,
So you had been developing your own indie game. This was part of what really impressed me about you when I first met you, because I met you through our mutual friend, Anthony, who's the designer on this game. So I was really impressed with what you had been doing up to that point, because You had already built a game in Game Maker called Savage Sword of Gozen. Is that right?
Yeah, the shard. You can
The
use the
shard.
shard as a sword probably too.
Shard. It's a shard of Gozen. Yeah.
Yeah. Not the
And
whole sword, just a little bit.
that's something that people can play right now, right?
Yes, they can't finish it yet though because it's not finished. But
Right. I
that's
pulled you away from
that's
all
a,
that. Yeah.
talking about aiming for the heavens, right, and landing in the backyard kind of thing earlier. But that's kind of what that was too. But yeah, I had done a lot of art over the years, a lot of music, a lot of stuff like that. So it made sense to me to like kind of pour all that into one thing, you know, and then learn programming, and then what I was working on with Savage was kind of similar in your goals for what you wanted with Twilight Monk, right? So it was like, hey, help me with Game Maker.
We
Like,
had
okay,
yeah, we had some of the same influences
yeah,
coming up, and you're a little bit younger than me, but like you had Zelda 2, right? Like, and we'll talk more about like the influences on Twilight Monk later, but the
yeah, we're some of the horrible weirdos that like that game.
yeah, I know it's almost masochistic, and to be honest with you, I've never been able to beat it. But I saw in Savage, I saw a lot of the same kind of like structurally the similar kind of things to what I wanted to do with Twilight Monk,
Yeah,
and also I was at a point where like I stopped doing a lot of contract work. I ran an art house for many years. We were creating a lot of concept art for video games, and at some point I was like, I'm just tired. I just wanted, like, when am I going to get to finally work on this Twilight Monk game I've been wanting to do for 20 years? And so like I was just going to do, I wanted to partner with you to do a Game Maker Studio, like small game, like just chapter one.
yeah. Just kidding.
Yeah, right. And but then when I posted it on Steam, just announcing that I was doing this, sort of like my retirement project, so to speak. Like I was like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't sell. I just want to do this finally, you know. And then I was like,
Yeah,
well, what's within the scope of what I can do? And I looked at what you were doing with Game Maker Studio, and I was like, this is a guy who already, like, you're resourceful, you're capable, you've proven, you don't wait around for somebody else to do things for you or complain that others aren't doing it for you. It's like, you need a heavy metal theme song, like, fuck it, let's just record, you know.
yeah,
And that's the scrappy kind of indie attitude that I really missed. You don't get that as much in big AAA studios. They discourage it, you know. And that part of me was dying, and I was like, that's not, I've always been indie. I loved the indie, like the expressiveness of doing indie things, right? So, and I saw that in you.
oh, thanks, man. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to kind of get dropped into the middle of the jungle with a knife, right? And then it's like, go, conquer, like figure it out. And it makes sense. Yeah, like in a lot of ways, I've failed spectacularly with Savage, for example, just in the amount of time it's taken and the what it's taken out, what it takes out of a person. So I'm not disparaging that, lack of desire to to crawl around in the dark,
And certainly, like it's a real test of your spirit and a test of your commitment and determination. And you have to love it. You have to love
Yeah.
even getting beat up. You almost have to be a little bit of a masochist to be an indie game dev or to be indie at all.
Yeah, and it's every time I'm doing anything like this, programming too, right? Because it's endless problems. You're solving a big, giant, complicated problem. You've seen the Edge with Anthony Hopkins, maybe, where they're being chased by bears or a bear.
No, I've never seen it.
So they're stranded on an island and whatever or something in the wilderness, and he's got Alec Baldwin with him, and he's like, "We should kill that bear." And Alec Baldwin's like, "You're crazy." And Anthony Hopkins is like, "What one man can do, another can do." And it's like, okay, that's the motto, you know.
But certainly that's what you're fighting when you're an indie. That's what you're fighting all the time, because you might make something that's like the greatest rock song ever written, but like nobody hears it, you know? Or you might write like, a really powerful, moving story, but because it's not published by Shonen Jump or Marvel, nobody notices. Right. It just goes completely under the radar. Yeah, and in our case, so far, and this is getting back to talking about Twilight Monk, we've got a really great publisher that's working tirelessly. You know, like I said, Prince and me, they're out there.
Yeah, thank God.
Working tirelessly. They're on Reddit all the time. They're answering questions. And I want to say this too, by the way. People may not realize just how so much of this game is the team. This isn't Trent's game. Like, this is the Aquatic Moon team. This is, I haven't talked about Amy yet. I haven't talked about Nate yet. I haven't talked about Graham's contribution as well. Like, really, everybody's putting forth their absolute best. And I got to put together the greatest, like, my dream team of people that I've known. Speaking of which, we should talk a little bit about, like, how did you and I meet? Do you remember our first interactions?
Windy
Beard.
Anthony of Windy Beard Games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He saw that you were looking for some game maker insight with Twilight Monk, and then he connected us.
That's when I started playing your game, and I was like, oh yeah, like, I want to work with this dude. And then I think you and I, we talked, we had one conversation, and when you and I talk, we can't shut up. It's like,
pretty much. There's a thing that happens, and we wind up talking about the Nintendo Power novels or whatever.
I love those. Yeah.
And you bought some on eBay immediately. Yeah, that was funny.
So I'd like for people to kind of get to know you a little bit more. Could you tell me a little bit about what got you working in video games? What got you into, like, this whole scene? This whole experience of making games. Why don't you give us your origin story here?
Well, the itch that I always wanted to make games, but I kind of got diverted both in hobby and, from a creator standpoint too. I moved to LA and I was trying to do the acting thing, and we were making films, and I was working on films, and we were doing like weird production gigs for marketing companies and stuff.
Any movies or anything that people could look up and see you?
Oh, geez.
You were in that commercial, right, for the cream?
No, I never made. We did do a marketing video for something called the Galactic Facial, but that's
Is that real?
It is.
What is it? Wait, hold on. What is a Galactic Facial?
Yeah, it's far less vile than it sounds, but it was a terrible name, but they paid us, so.
Hey, you know what? Not too many people can say they got paid for a Galactic Facial.
That's true. Yeah, but it was like a massage company, like a spa company, and they were trying to sell this a line of products and like a treatment sequence or something. So we filmed it. We filmed somebody getting one of these Galactic Facials. Wow. Like, I did the music and stuff and edited together a video, and whatever. It's not that interesting, but I was in one of my shirts Gary Busey had to wear for a weird movie called Dazed, I think. Mm-hmm. Because I was dating the prop and makeup girl on the production. Mm-hmm. And there was some situation where they couldn't find wardrobe for him. So I was just, like, what is your size? And it was like, I'm, this. And like, go get one of your shirts. I'm like, okay. So he's
literally the shirt off of your back.
Yeah, I gave Gary Busey the shirt off my back.
Wow.
And that was a weird.
I learned something new about you every time we talk.
This
is a new one.
But no, I wasn't in anything. Like, you can't,
But it explains.
Can't see me, like, acting or something.
But it explains a little bit of your, like, I didn't realize how involved you were with, like you say it was like indie film and commercial and stuff like that in Hollywood.
Yeah, we did quite a few, like, indie films and stuff, and I'm told that one of our more ambitious things, John Cusack got a hold of, and he was really excited about it and showed it to a bunch of his friends, and then some of our material wound up in Hot Tub Time Machine, which is his production company.
Big controversy. So you wrote Hot Tub Time Machine, you're saying?
The whole thing, yeah.
The whole thing.
I shot all of that, and
they're going to fact check you on that one.
Gags and stuff,
Yeah.
Wound up, and there was like, oh, that's a funny coincidence.
It's always tricky though when you're trying to, like, get something off the ground and you show it to people in, like, first of all, I hate Hollywood. It's so shady, and I don't even want to go into my terrible experiences working with Hollywood types. But it's always so risky because when you're trying to find a publisher, it's like, well, they could literally just take your idea, give you nothing and say, oh, well, we can't be responsible if we had similar ideas, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was
yeah.
it was a project me and my buddy were working on. He directed and shot it. I was a like some kind of punker in it who lost his finger. It was called The Finger. And yeah, it was funny to see that later. Like I had moved away, and I got a gig at a movie theater that I used to work at in high school, and then I see it on the screen, while I'm cleaning up, like some kids popcorn vomit or something.
Was there a specific bit that you could point to and say that's the bit or the joke or the dialogue that?
Yeah, I can.
What is it?
So there's a sequence in there where there's I can't. It's like the guys go back in time, and like one of the guys has the hots for one of his friend's moms, but his mom is young or something. And they, there's a sex scene in it that's like almost shot for one of ours, where like the girl's kind of bored or whatever, and not to get too crass, I guess, but to get very crass on the first episode of this. And then the Crispin Glover thing where he loses his arm and a bike takes it off. And then like he has to get it back and he gets it reattached and it goes on ice and all that stuff. That's almost our whole like premise for the finger. So,
no way. Yeah.
It's just a finger.
So it's more than, it's not just like, a couple of coincidences. It's like a substantial amount of very clear. I'm surprised that there wasn't like some legal pursuit with that.
Well, it was, we were like early 20s and we didn't know we had no money. We had nothing, except cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
Just running around trying to make stuff. So we didn't know how to approach any of that or necessarily have the desire to, I guess. But
yeah. So getting back to how that led you into games, like
yeah, exactly. So I needed a place to kind of dump all this stuff, right? And like I was in a few bands and stuff, and those are always funky. So I was like, I want to do a thing on my own that, well, nobody can mess up really except me, where it's like I'm responsible for the whole thing, and I won't steal my own stuff, and I won't cancel practice, right, or something. And it was kind of going back to the hobby that I grew up loving, and kind of diving back into it, and like I always wanted to make a game. Let me see, what's out there that will let me make a game. And some internet searches led me to Game Maker. So I bought some books and just did them cover to cover. That was when Game Maker had books at Barnes and Noble, I think is where I got them.
Right. And honestly, like I learned to program in Game Maker Studio too, and I think it's a fantastic programming language for an artist, let's say, or a non-programmer minded person to learn.
Yeah.
But it is
teaches you a lot about how to structure that kind of thinking.
Exactly.
And everything.
Think like a programmer. And thinking like a programmer changed my life. From everything from investing to like automating certain systems or creating templates or creating instances. Like an instance is just a copy that has all the same features as something else, but maybe it has a different variable, right? So I do that.
Yeah, it's got a unique identifier in the scene now or whatever. Yeah. And thinking like about what's happening every frame and how to inject your will into that sequence.
So Savage, we kind of left it a little bit, nebulous about like its current status, but like it's currently in early access, right? Like you're still actively working on it, but like how often are you working on Savage?
Well, currently it's usually, a day or two out of the week.
Mostly weekends, right? You don't stop.
A few hours here and there, but sorry, say again.
You don't stop, right? Like you're working weekends.
No, work has not stopped on it. It's slowed, of course, but still going.
Because you're on Twilight Monk.
Too, that you can. Yes, I'm on Twilight Monk.
5 days a week.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On top of doing,
depending on what's going on, right? Like if the publisher needs a demo or something, or kind of rallying around a situation.
There's never an urgent need.
we make it super good.
So then you were. Players are still waiting for that too, but they can play a good chunk of it right now. But they're still waiting for it to kind of get a button on it, right?
Yeah, and I've seen people, take like 10 hours with what's there.
Nice.
So it's meaty, and there's a demo that's like probably way too long as well. but but yeah, it just doesn't have a credit sequence really. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I would love to put in there, but
feature creep. Yeah, it's a big danger,
exactly.
man. It never ends. And there were so many things, even with Twilight Monk, that like, save it for that sequel. Well, hopefully, we get a chance to do that.
Yeah, well, and that's what's been for me. What I've learned a lot about with this whole thing is like I've never done something like this with a team before, and you just never mind like deadlines outside of that and stuff, but which are also very helpful in just getting things done. But making sure that you're not blocking anybody from their work as well, or trying to. It's like if something's not working or it's broken or something, and it's impinging on one of the other programmers, or a boss fight needs to be finished, but there's some weird behavior problem that's preventing you from even getting into the boss fight from testing it. That's been interesting too, to just make sure that the way is clear.
That's
my part.
That's been one of the most exciting parts about working with this particular team for me, is that historically, if I had an idea for how to make something, or for like an indie game, I had to think in terms of like, what is my skill set and what do I know how to do? And I was limited to that. But working with this team, we have yet to run into a problem that we cannot put our heads together to solve. That's been really interesting. All doors are open. And so like, should we get a chance to make another game together, which I certainly hope we do get a chance to, the really want to blow the doors off of it and just see what the heck we can do, and get a little bit more ambitious about some things, because I've yet to see anything. I've yet to throw a problem at the team that, we can't solve together.
Yeah. And that's, never mind like kind of building a little engine to do something like what Twilight Monk is doing, but like learning how to work with you, and learning how to work with Wendy and Nate and Amy and Graham. That's prep work in my eyes as well.
Yeah.
Like that's like, oh, okay. Now it's like we're used to each other's call and response.
Yeah.
And what that means.
Yeah.
And how to deploy it and everything. So that's been interesting too.
Well, that is a
tool.
That's another factor, and one of the reasons why I hope we just keep this exact team together, because something I've seen throughout every, game I've worked on is like oftentimes it's musical chairs and people switch out. It's like, but we just learned really how to, like, what to count on each other for, Like,
and what the other guy's ability is, and what they're good at noticing or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And if like, that is an extremely unquantifiable but undervalued asset, like being,
and it's very real, and it's like you start to see it, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because now, like, if we added another continent or something, to this game has like something like, I don't want to say, it has a lot of content. I don't want to spoil it. I have to watch myself because people haven't played the whole game yet, just the demo.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if we were to add a whole section to the game, it's like, we could do that in like 3 or 4 months. Yeah, pretty comfortably.
Yeah, establishing a workflow, I think is
yeah,
probably kind of what I was trying to say, right? You don't know what that looks like until you do, and now we have that.
Yeah, that's
toward the end.
Yeah, that said though, and I really don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but what's it like working for me?
Oh no! Oh, it's the greatest, best ever. Thank you. Can I have another?
Nice.
No, just kidding.
Nice.
No, it's well, I mean, we kind of hit it off from the get go, so it feels friendly. It feels it helps that we kind of speak the same language in regard to like one of our most favoritist hobbies, right?
Yeah.
And we happen to be trying to bring something to life in that realm. So
this game would be so different without you. Like you've really put a lot of your own. Well, first of all, like when we're having discussions about game design or features for the game, I think there's been a lot of times when you and I are so much on the same page that it's uncanny and strange to me. Because it does feel like we've been pals for a really long time, because we're so much on the same wavelength, and also similar sense of humor, and also similar I think, things that we appreciate in games. And so I find that like I really can't imagine this game looking or playing the way that it does without you. Like your contribution has been absolutely integral, and I hope you feel that every day. I've said that to you many times before, and if I haven't, then I'm saying it now so that it's documented, it's written, it's recorded. I mean that, you know.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
No, when I look at
I appreciate it, man, and I mean, I feel very lucky and blessed to even get to do this. Like this is, this is what I wanted to do when I was like 5. Yeah, and it's like at the time I was like, I'm gonna work for Nintendo, because like I played Mario Brothers on the NES, but it's like I'd rather work here than at Nintendo.
Yeah, see, you hit the nail on the head with something there, because I wanted game development to be what it is for Twilight Monk. Like doodling ideas down on paper and then like just throwing them out into the game and it just gets in. But when I started working at big game studios like Blizzard or Riot, like that started to die. Like I was there as the sun set on the old generation and the way that games used to be. And I don't mean that as some criticism of current developers at these companies. I have many friends who are very passionate developers, but for me, my favorite times of developing games have always been when it's a very small studio. You know everybody on the team, you know what they're going through. It's like, I know things on your day-to-day that are happening, and you're person to me. You're not, animator number 23 or programmer number, who's just in charge of that department. It's like that.
Yeah, and maybe they're doing their work, maybe they're not. Who knows?
And yes, exactly. And that character, that sense of humor, or that, like, your personality is injected into, I don't want to use character names because they're spoilers, but like specific characters in the game that you've added your personality to, that people will find. That like I wanted to make sure everybody on the team did a voice for a monster or an NPC, in the game. And you've added a lot of that in yourself. You've infused that in the way that characters are interacting. And you've done a lot with the boss fights too. And it shows, So,
and being able to have that trust is a big deal to me, because otherwise I'll get bored, right?
Right. Exactly.
You've allowed me to noodle a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. Where I
do not.
What would it sound like if I put a little musical sting here, sound effects here, a little voiceover of a guy yelling here?
You know what? The first time I grab your noodle, you're free to smack me away. Okay, I want you to have your own ownership over your own noodling, and that's an important part of the DNA of a game. Right? Like that's what I'm talking about. And so what Aquatic Moon is...
There's a lot of riffing back and forth. Yeah, there's a lot of improv back and forth. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what Aquatic Moon is those development teams. It's the way I imagined those development teams were in the 90s, where
like Doom or something.
There's inside jokes in the game. There's like little bits that are just, hey, this happened to me the other day. Even tragedies we turn into like humorous little bits in the game. It's how we're coping with life as well. And that to me, I really hope that a lot of players don't just dismiss it as like, it's corny dialogue or whatever. It's like, there's a reason why things are very kind of tongue in cheek. And there's a reason why there's, certain statues in the environment. There's certain little inside fun jokes that I think are, again, like I said, like the DNA of the people who made it. That's so
at its
important.
most primal level. It's because we like that stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And
you're not going to find that in a committee driven,
exactly,
full of red tape situation.
Exactly. And I think that our publishers are very much interested in keeping us on these sort of milestone production deadlines, but they're also flexible enough with like the content. They've never like stepped in and said, hey, we don't understand this joke or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Maybe the localization department in another language is trying to just understand it so they can convey it. And I really hope that they're able to. Some jokes might not translate, because I have an odd sense of humor. and I wrote a lot, 95% of the script for this game,
Or
but
will be like really big in Yugoslavia.
Right.
It'll just hit.
What's really funny is I wrote a lot of Final Fight Streetwise. It's an old game from Capcom. And that game, you should play it. It's people, like, it got trashed when it was released, but now, like, almost 20 years later, it's like a cult classic because you got, like, a lot of streamers that play it, and the modern sense of humor is more in line with my sense of humor at the time. So when they pick up that this is a kind of a jokey game, it's so much more fun for them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the attitude I wanted to convey almost immediately with Twilight Monk. When you look at Twilight Monk, what are the games or movies that you think or you feel like inspired it?
Geez. If I'm looking at it, I mean, it's hard to not just like dive into the stuff I grew up with, but like there's a particular era of kids TV that I grew up with, and I see a lot of Twilight Monk in there, like Biker Mice from Mars kind of stuff.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
I know probably to you would be like, what? No. But
I didn't. Well, I'd never watched it. I saw one episode when I was like 8.
But just like kind of that like attitude. Like I could see Twilight Monk the show sort of being slotted in that, Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Right around there.
TMNT, right?
Like, there's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's The Tick.
Yeah.
There's Eek the Cat, and then Twilight Monk, and then Street Sharks or something.
Yeah. No, I wanted it to feel like an indie comic from the 90s, or like an indie game. Like we didn't have indie games in the 90s so much. Every game.
Well, yeah,
was an
that
indie
too.
game.
Yeah, I could see it like on the if I went to Comic-Con, as a teenager, which I did quite a few times, but like I would see it next to again, stuff like The Tick or Usagi Yojimbo or a lot of other indie comics that I picked up at the time. Like freaking, what was that Milk one?
Milk and Cheese?
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, kind of. Like some of the more gritty stuff and violent stuff, but also the goofier stuff.
Like Scud.
Yeah, like Scud. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like from that era, that kind of crop of ideas and stuff. Like Earthworm Jim or something. Yeah,
Earthworm Jim.
Battletoads.
Fun game. Yeah. I never got so much into Battletoads though.
But yeah, just that era.
Are you talking about like the home console port, or are you talking about the arcade?
Yeah, the NES version specifically.
Okay.
That was the one that I played to death.
Okay. Then probably, that one was probably tuned to be a little bit more solo play.
Yeah. Or maybe more appropriate stuff like Double Dragon. Like Twilight Monk has that vibe too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Oh, man. When I was a kid, my brother and I, when I'd go out with our grandma, we'd mow her lawn, and then she'd take us to this like Ace Hardware store. It was like a small town Ace Hardware. And they had one of those, yeah. They had G.I. Joes, Transformers, and they had like 2 arcade machines. It was Double Dragon and Bad Dudes.
Oh, sick. Yeah. Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the President of the United States of America from ninjas?
Fuck, yeah. That was...
It asked you that question, and you're like, I don't know. Let's see.
I don't know. I got my ripped T-shirt and my jeans on and my shades.
Got my bad boy T-shirt on and my no fear hat. And let's do this.
Images from that game of like just jumping across the back of a train, like beating people up on the back of a train. I'll never. Yeah,
or you're on the back of a semi or something and kicking ninjas off of it, and
they had a real like when you really dig into like how technologically limited the NES and those old arcade machines were. They did a lot to make it exciting, man. That Russian background, like that's
the scrolling backgrounds. Yeah, it's like Hanna-Barbera, right? It's the same crap in the background, but it's.
When they figured that out in their development team, they must have just been so excited because that could just create so much motion and energy, stuff moving all over the place. So, but I mean, on such a simple machine, when you really think about it now, it's like, God, you can fit 1 billion of those games onto a cheap $50 handheld portable Retroid Pocket or whatever.
Every video game in history from that era can be
Yeah.
put on a teeny tiny little thing.
Yeah. Yeah. At the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
In your pocket. So like the technical limitations of what they were able to achieve is staggering. And in fact, I found like it actually gets harder to make games as there are less technical constraints, you know?
Oh, absolutely. You're paralyzed with choice, and it's like having an infinite color palette, and you're like, I don't know what color to make his shoes.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. But
whatever.
when you know you only got 16 colors, it's like, well, I see the problem in front of me. It's very clear. Let's just hammer away at it.
Time to pull a magic trick and make people care about the color of his shoes.
But when your options are infinite, it's like, okay, well, let's just try something. If it doesn't work, we'll figure out another solution later.
Yeah. It's just immediate example. I had that problem with Savage because I didn't limit myself. So
yeah,
it's just like, I guess every color, and then we'll see. And it's, some of it looks like vomit or something.
Yeah.
But having limitations is also kind of exciting to me.
Yeah. With this, I had never worked with milestones before like this. Like,
I think that kind of drew some stuff out that wouldn't have otherwise materialized.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's like I've cursed it throughout all of develop. I don't want to say cursed it. I've been agitated and lost many nights of sleep over milestone goals. And for those, I should explain it to the audience. There's a lot of people that might not know what we're even talking about, but
right, yes,
I forget people are listening to this conversation. not a podcaster, still figuring it out. So a milestone is where this is so stressful for me because like when you start a project and you're pitching your budget and your scope of your project to the publisher, you have to write out all of the features and estimate how long it'll take for you to solve all those problems within it. So like, for instance, you might say, oh, well, we want to have, a train here that the player can use. And it's like, okay, well, what's the level of functionality for that? How long will it take for you to program that? If you don't have any programming experience, you got to guesstimate how long it'll take for a skilled programmer at your existing budget to figure out said problem. And then you've got to kind of figure out like, well, if that's going to fit into this milestone, well, then are we going to need it for, like, does this problem need to be solved before milestone 7, for example? And these are 3-month intervals. So if you don't deliver what you promised you said you'd deliver within that interval, then your team doesn't get paid. And you're in default.
You're contractually obliged to make 8 enemies for this milestone or whatever. Right, you got that crunchy and that detailed.
Yes, and at one point, the publisher's like, "Well, how many lines of dialogue are there in the last chapter?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't written the second chapter yet." So it's really a lot of really trying to guesstimate based on your experience and hope and pray that the people that you've chosen to work with are going to be really able to solve those problems. And so like, I know sometimes you get a lot dropped on you, but like you always come through, everybody on this team is like pulled through, whenever faced with one of these impossible challenges. And we still find a way to, sometimes it's just like we found a temporary solution, but it sort of works and it gets the job done enough for us to see the bigger picture. And that allows us to move on to the next milestone. But people listening, artists especially, might be like, oh, I hate the idea of milestones. I hate the idea of having a deadline on these things. But the fact is like, I know that especially with creative people, sometimes having a constraint, and this is getting back to the topic we were talking about before, having palette constraints or polygon constraints or color constraints or schedule constraints really forces you to like go with your best, like go with your gut, trust in yourself. And the more you can develop those skills of trusting in yourself and trusting in your team, again, this is like tying it all together, finding a team of people you can really count on to solve problems is like the most important thing to look for when you're building your team. And that's where the magic really comes together. And sometimes you find that the solutions you find, that duct tape that you put on it or whatever, as you said, sometimes that adds this like level of charm, like a good example is like we ran out of like time to really animate every character running everywhere. So when an NPC like delivers a line of dialogue, we just decided, it'd be funnier if they just poofed out. Like everybody.
Yeah. Why don't they travel by smoke bomb?
Yeah. And so the way, exactly. And so Amy got even more clever with it. She's our animator, Amy Summers, and she's like, well, maybe this guy sneezes and he poofs out after he sneezes. So, like, you know, that added personality to it. So these constraints can sometimes make you think very creatively in a way that you didn't think would be, you know, like the artist in all of us wants to go, wow, we want another 2 years of development to just make it perfect. And that's what I was used to at like Blizzard or Riot, where they had infinite budgets and infinite time. But we had a pretty firm deadline on this and pretty firm milestones. And so,
it's been refreshingly aggressive.
Yeah, and I
in
think
a good way, because it's made you commit to things, and it's me.
Exactly.
I know I've needed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Deadlines like this.
Yeah, and I think that if you were to tackle, like, say, even the remainder of Savage, like, you've seen the benefit of that. So you might even like go in and write down your own milestones to just go, oh, this feature is going to be in by that time and this feature by that time, just to like go, okay, I'm not going to let myself get distracted noodling around with this one feature that isn't due. You know, I'm going to focus on kind of getting that like rough draft and then doing another layer, another pass on it until it's refined and polished. And that's been, I found the best way to just get things done. And, you know, I think back to, I've mentioned this in a video that I made on my YouTube channel before, but like Majora's Mask was made that way, where they only had 18 months to make a sequel to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, holy crap.
Yeah, right. And Ocarina of Time was received as like one of the greatest games of all time upon its release. Still is to this day. It's like a legendary game. And so to be faced with having to make a full-on sequel in 18 months, when you really think about it, like a lot of people in the audience might be going, oh, well, I don't see the problem. It goes together real easy. Well, guess what, man? Like when you really think about how much you yourself can do in a day, and then you think about how quickly a week goes by. I don't know about you, Matt, but like this last 2.5 years for me has gone by like in an instant.
Yeah, that's part of what's actually kind of enjoyable, but nothing sort of stagnates. I'm not sitting here going, you know, feeling like I'm walking uphill or something. It's over in an instant. And it's like, I didn't get to everything I wanted to even.
Right. But the things, the impact of what you're doing matters, and it affects everything else in the game.
Yeah. You got to play a hardcore game of triage to get at the stuff that you're going to get the most bang for your buck at.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times you're just making really tough decisions on the fly that you don't fucking know if it's going to work, but you go for it because you're like, you know what? I'm not going to make a boring game. I'm not going to let that happen. So we got to get that scene in there with this thing or that thing. You know, I'm trying real hard to not give spoilers. But like a great example of that is when we switched engines. So this is getting back to the topic you wanted to talk about. We'll just talk about we'll wrap it up soon, don't worry. Yeah, when we were negotiating our contract, it took about 8 months to kind of get that contract finalized. And honestly, it's the most incredible publishing contract I've ever had. It's great. But literally 2 weeks before we were supposed to start actual Milestone development, you and I had a conversation where we were both very frustrated with Game Maker Studio, which is primarily only a 2D engine. And
yeah, you should be doing 2D games in it, which, I mean, Twilight Monk's goals were that.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, we were like, well, if we want to build an engine and a game that's going to have sequels, I don't want to dink around with like an engine that is only going to frustrate and annoy programmers. If we wanted to hire programmers and animators, and like we were already running into frustrations with like the compile times, and I don't want to go too much into like the problems with Game Maker Studio. It was a great tool for our sort of budding ambitions when we were doing solo projects on our own. But when you're working with a team, it's like a lot of people would be more interested and excited to work on Unreal, right?
Well, and it's a visually demanding game, right? There's a lot of, and that would have limited your ability to play in it as a visual guy and a designer.
And we had built, there's a demo for the original demo that got us the publishing deal. You and I buckled down, and in 30 days we made like a good chunk of Catacombs all in Game Maker Studio. And I would love to get like a recording of that whole thing and post the comparison contrast of the two.
Because I haven't looked at it in
I know, in like 2.5 years. I've forgotten it almost entirely, because we just basically, I went on a walk with my wife, and I was like, she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, we're just so frustrated with this engine that we're about to sign up for a 2-year development cycle with.
I made a joke that we should switch to Unreal.
You made a joke that we should switch to Unreal. And then I was like, you know what? Let's try it. We'll assess it over the weekend. And
yeah. It was like a couple days of like, can we do this? Could we? Should we?
Yeah. And then Monday comes around and you're like, dude, this is freaking awesome. And I was so stoked to be working with these like vignette shadowbox style cutouts of 2D worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. You're building a diorama all of a sudden. In 3D space. Yeah.
As an artist, my mind was blown. Like, oh, I could just put a light in here. I don't have to create like a alpha channel fake layer effect thing. It was just so liberating. And
yeah, and you've got parallax scrolling out of the box, right? Because it's true 3D space. So you're just moving a camera across it. Yeah,
exactly. There are ways to cleverly program features that could do that in Game Maker Studio, but
yeah, but you really, really, really got to know what you're doing, and you got to go way out of your way to do it.
Yes. Furthermore, there's like just using a post-processing volume in Unreal Engine is so much more enjoyable than fiddling with it in Game Maker. There was every aspect of my job as an artist and as a being responsible for the visual presentation of the game. Every aspect of that part of my role was improved, vastly improved. And what's been really rewarding for me is that every single person who's demoed our game or played our game says they like the art. Every single person. Now that could be because I'm blasting it out to people who followed my art, but it's more of a chibi version of my art. Do you know what I mean? And yet people see our game and they go, wow, this is really cool. And we've really kind of gotten away from some of our comparisons that we were compared to earlier on in development as well. It's getting its own identity now. But
yeah, and that's what I was hoping would happen with this because your design sensibilities and everything and just the look and the vibe and everything is very strong. And communicating that into the game space, it eventually paid off, I think, a great deal.
I think so. And quite frankly, like, and quite honestly, and I know there are probably developers who will listen to this and that'll go, oh, well, Unreal sucks. You should have used Unity. And, you know, hey, like...
No, yeah, of course. There's going to be, like, the boy genius or whoever, the girl genius, someone genius, out there who's going to hear, you know, me saying those things about Game Maker. That's like, I can make Game Maker sing and dance and do anything. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. But for our situation and for our knowledge level, right, I felt like I would have needed a computer science degree or something to get more out of it.
Yeah, like
there's no time.
Dudes, here's the thing: we're artists. We're just scrappy, like indie devs. We didn't get a computer science degree. We're not like digging into the back end of code. We're just looking to get results
and as fast
as possible, right? And ultimately, like, yeah, certainly there are going to be people like Jonathan Blow would cringe, you know, like the guy's so technical about every little thing, and I'm not being critical.
Yeah,
of Jonathan
he probably
Blow.
just threw up in his mouth a little bit.
Yeah, you probably he just had an aneurysm, like, you know, like something popped in his head when he heard that. But no, it's the thing is like we're not that. Like we're really interested in like what is the player going to feel. Like every decision
what's going to happen when you hit a bad guy and how does that feel?
Yeah, I don't care if there's
do that a million times.
I don't care if there's 300 yards of duct tape behind the scenes as long as that works. As long as the player feels great when they hit this enemy or
as long as they can do that and not melt somebody's machine at the same time, then it's like, okay, mission accomplished.
Yeah. But whatever the case, Unreal Engine has been like just a glorious dream. With that.
There's always going to be something, right, that you don't like or that because this is ultimately it's an engine built by somebody else. So you're kind of appropriating it to do what you want it to do. Even Twilight Monk too. It's like Unreal is not designed to make what we're making, but we made it work.
That's true. There was not a lot of support for like how to do 2.5D platform.
How do I make it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
how do I make a little Ninja Gaiden guy do something? And it's like there's no answers.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody cares.
How do I make a Medusa head from Castlevania do like a sine wave pattern? And then it's like there's nothing. It's like I had to copy a lot of logic from my work in Game Maker to like do a lot of the stuff. Like Chutar. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm treading into spoiler territory, but there's Chutar, like very old school methods of producing effects, right? like from Narc, for example, or Contra or something, where you've got like a chained being that has all its like globular bits, and they're all kind of moving around together. There's some pretty old school stuff that we were attempting, and it's like, okay, I got to go dig into GameMaker and get that logic and kind of translate it to Unreal to make it work. But anyway, I digress hard.
But this goes back to, and bringing it back into like why we got onto this topic. When I say scrappy, I mean a lot of times just that we throw out like, hey, why don't we switch engines? And then we just fucking commit to that. And as deadly and dangerous and dark as those waters look,
what one man can do, another can do.
Exactly. And that's where it really ties into what we started out talking about in this episode, where we're really just like winging it, but it's like we put faith in your team and in your ability to overcome these challenges, and you come out stronger at the end, and ultimately you come out with a game that hopefully other people recognize has a lot of like the charm of your personality, and your scrappiness is part of its DNA and its soul. And that's where, like, you know, I've fallen in love with playing a lot more retro games on my Steam Deck because of that. It's like I love a little bit of that 90s jank, you know, like when I say jank, I just mean like you can see when you're a developer, you really see where the personality of some older games comes from having limited milestone time, or it comes from the limitations of the engine, or it comes from their limitations of their knowledge at the time, even. You know?
Yeah, it's almost like the difference between what you said about, you know, retro jank stuff. It's like it's the difference between practical effects and, you know, pure raw digital everything. Right. Where it's like you can see that guy built the miniature of, you know, Minas Tirith or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And there's all there's makeup, and there's, you know, maybe there's stop motion or whatever, versus like something that's purely done in a program, and the camera's doing stuff that, you know, is not possible in real life, and, you know, maybe the monster's a little too shiny or something. But the other thing doesn't look real necessarily, but it's like you can touch it and you can feel it.
Yeah. Oh, it's like I love that when you're watching 1977 Star Wars, you can like freeze frame a couple of scenes and you'll see that they have like a telephone or like a nightlight post, you know, or a street light post, you know.
Yeah, or you can see
in the miniature,
in the, like what they keyed out, right? Like you can see the line around the TIE fighter or something, or
that's
whatever.
part of the charm.
Yeah.
That's part of the charm, and that's what you get from that is the charm of indie spirit, and that's what I think ultimately adds so much of that personality that I feel like is kind of when you got infinite budgets and you have big corporate interests involved, and you've got, you know, AI generated bullshit, and you've got all this stuff, and it's like, oh, we fixed it, it's so precise and so pristine and there's not a flaw in it. It's like, well, then I'm not interested,
and it's not human.
Yeah, it's not a human anymore. And I love that we've got that, and all the feedback that we do get, even the complaints. It's like, yeah, I kind of like it though, you know. Like, you know, a lot of times I'll listen to some feedback and I just go, yeah, but you know, I kind of like it. And that's the thing about even our game is that, you know, we're developers on it. Normally they say every game I've ever worked on, I'm sick of by the time it ships. Diablo 3, I was so sick of it by the time it shipped. I never played the World of Warcraft expansions I worked on because I was so sick of them. I don't even know like what the final parts of Northrend look like, you know, of Wrath of the Lich King, because I was just like so tired of like literally 14 hours a day at the office, sick of the world that I was in, and yet with Twilight Monk, I can keep playing it over and over. I've beaten it like 20 times now. I'm like, and I still get excited because I'll like find a wall or something that like, oh, well, Anthony must have moved that, or, you know, this path that I didn't think about, or doing these things in a different order and things like that. And our game's still very fun to play.
Yeah, it feels good to me, and again, when you're working on a team, which is a new experience for me, it's cool to not know where the secrets are because Anthony did them, you know, I didn't do them. So like, I don't know where he put hidden stuff. I still haven't found everything. It's like I get to play it, you know, as a blind playthrough in a manner of speaking, some aspect of it at least.
Well, for you and your job, your role is very like micro, like you're focused on just that boss fight for a while, or you're focused on just the behavior of that enemy for a while. So when you're testing, You're just testing that little part, whereas Anthony and I were playing through the
it's like
full
what happens
context.
when you hit the wall with your pillar, right?
Yeah,
like doing that over and over, and I don't see what you guys are doing with the game.
Right. And then you'll just get like some little clip from us, in the task management software that's like, hey, this enemy does this really weird thing when you do that. And you're like, oh,
when you put it in your water.
Yeah, or that's a big one. It'll be a fun new experience for you to play through the whole scope of things. And in a lot of ways, like, I wish I could just watch you play through it too. We've been doing a lot of that this weekend because right now, currently, and by the time this airs, it'll probably be over. But right now, like, people are playing the game, the demo, the playtest on Steam.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, I wanted to get back to, like, I want to try to tune into every single person that's streaming it and blast it out on Twitter. We're so grateful to everybody who did or who is currently still streaming the game and showing it some love. It's really tough to stand out when nobody knows who you are, But every single person that's like what do they call it? Like early adopter, everyone who gives the game a chance just because they think the art's cool or whatever reason. It doesn't matter. It's
hugely appreciated.
Yeah, it's hugely appreciated.
That means everything.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear, if people have thoughts or comments or like what they would want to know about in future podcast episodes. I'm still kind of new to this. If you have a criticism as well, you can keep that to yourself. No, that's okay. You can
shut up.
You can give me some. I don't want to become a podcaster. Do you know what I mean? But I want to give people some good, juicy bits if you're into the lore or the background of like how Twilight Monk came to be.
Well, you're talking about what you like, and you're talking about what you're doing, and that's
Oh man, there's a million things I want to talk about. There's a million things, dude. So like, I want to have you back on for another future episode, but like. I want to talk about some games we've been playing. I want to talk about some books we've been reading, some just movies we've been seeing, like just the stuff that's influencing us as we're like, oh my God, people don't know, but like I binged the entire Star Trek series while we've been making this game.
Oh, really? I don't think I knew that either.
Oh, really?
The original series?
Yeah, dude, the entire series. So not just the original from the 60s, like everything.
Oh, I see. TNG, freaking Deep Space Nine.
Everything except Discovery.
Did you Voyager too? Then
I watched all of Voyager, all of Deep Space Nine.
Oh man,
I didn't watch Lower Decks, which is the animated series. But yeah. So some of that may have like seeped into a little bit of like some of the themes within the story, but like. Yeah, and I'm a junkie for like sort of serialized sci-fi. Like I loved the Stargate series. I loved Battlestar Galactica. Where it was kind of.
I want to watch the Stargate series.
So good. Oh, just start with Atlantis. Atlantis is the best.
I got to start at the beginning. I have to start like at the band's first crappy demo.
That's true. Yeah. It's good stuff, man.
I don't feel like I have the full scope.
It's campy, and they touch on a lot of the same stuff. It's like when you start watching them, you're like, oh, so they got the idea for this episode from that episode of Star Trek from 1970, whatever.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But at the same time, and it's not high budget either. It's not, a lot of times you'll see the zipper on the back of the guy's rubber suit, and that's fine. It's like the first time you see the Gorn. Dude, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The Gorn. Yes. Guy in a suit. Anyway, for now, I think it would be good. I think it's like I wanted to do an hour. I think we did like an hour and a half or two. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But hey, thanks for joining me, man. Is there anything
Thank you.
that you wanted to say to the audience or to the people following the game or the podcast?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know. Just thanks for playing Twilight Monk.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. We're super grateful. It would
hope you enjoy it.
My greatest fear in life is that I'll throw a party and nobody will show up. So for everybody who did show up, man, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. And that's why we want to do everything we can to like do these extra things like the podcast, and really grateful for everybody who's going to pick up the game too. So if you haven't already checked it out, watch the community tab on the Steam page. It's also coming out on Switch and PC, and it'll be out in spring as the current official release date for the Twilight Monk game. And tune into my YouTube channel if you want to watch some of the development as I'm doing paintings. Right now I'm doing a lot of cool promotional paintings, and I just finished doing, I can't say, just a really cool painting of Twilight Monk that's for something that'll be really neat that we will announce in the future. So
way cooler than the Gorn.
Way cooler than the Gorn, yeah. Anyway, all right, dudes, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one. Ciao.